Hello, this is XP Scaling. Today we're going to be covering Chapter 1, Part 2 for Baki Scaling. This will mainly be covering 13-year-old Baki, as at this point in time, he has very impressive feats. So here we go. So, quickly, Baki has a quick reunion with his mother, and he references the first fight he had with Yuri. And please note, Yuri had 3 months of boxing training. And Baki straight up says, wow, when I fought him, this guy was at least 5 times faster. Implying that, bare minimum, Baki got 5 times stronger than what he was when he first fought Yuri. And like what I just said earlier, Yuri, for reference, went through 3 months of training to become a heavyweight boxer. So that would mean that this stronger Yuri is 5 times faster, 5 times what he was when Baki first fought, featherweight Yuri. Now, later on, Baki meets this guy named Hanayama. Hanayama's a Yakuza. He's a gangster who's the top gangster in Japan. And Baki proceeds to, challenge him to a fight. And for reference, Hanayama meets this guy named Tom Carson. He stomps him, he dislocates his jaw, turns both his arms into noodles, was about to rip off this guy's ears, and, Baki, he's going about his day life, goes to high school, says, "Sup, guys? Oh, that's a knife? Cool." Breaks it. Meets Yuri, says, "Look, Yuri, your boxing's incomplete." Cuts open a sandbag, is literally like, "Look, boxing's, it's all a sport. There's no grappling, there's no kicking, there's no throwing, there's no elbows, there's no knees, and there's definitely no headbutts. Boxing is only a sport. It's not real fighting." Sadly, this is what happens to Yuri. Hanayama says, "Yo, Yuri, catch this L for me." And Yuri catches it hard. Now, sometime later, Baki, seeing as Yuri's now his friend, he's just like, "Yo, bro, I got this. I'm gonna avenge you." Pulls up on, Hanayama, right? Goes into his, headquarters, the Yakuza place. Kicks his desk out the window. And proceeds to, hit Hanayama hard enough to make him fall. This is the first time, that Hanayama's ever been, 1, probably hit this hard, and 2, been knocked to the floor. Please note, Baki at this point should honestly be as strong as the Yasha ape. For reference, in my previous video, which, I don't blame you if you're not going to watch it. It's kind of 30 minutes long. Should hit with at least 6,500 pounds of force and should have a theoretical lifting strength of a gorilla, which should be about 4,000 pounds. And this was the first time Hanayama's ever been knocked down to the floor. So that means if we scale Baki to that gorilla, which at this point he should probably be at, if not above, it took him hitting at least with 6,500 pounds of force to knock him down. This is the first time Hanayama's ever experienced that. That should, be a telltale sign as to what's going to come up when they fight. Sadly, they don't get to fight right then and there. Cops show up, they're just like, "Oh, great, it's the fuzz. We gotta go." And, Hanayama stalks Baki, but, Baki has, he has an awareness as to what's going on, but not like a Spider-Man awareness. By no means am I gonna claim that this guy can, Spidey sense. But something that he does develop and does understand later on is, the difference in strengths between fighters. He's able to tell, how strong a guy is just by looking at him. Just by looking at him, he can also tell how dangerous they are. But, that's later on in the series. But at this point, there should be, like a preview sign as to what's going to come. And due to this, he knew that Hanayama or someone dangerous was trying to follow him, leads him to a nightclub where I guess he decided that was going to be a good place to fight. And immediately writes off rip, gets hit by Hanayama, right? And states, "This guy is even stronger than the great ape." So considering that, if you guys want to, downplay Hanayama, or someone, let's lowball Hanayama, should be bare minimum as strong as the Yasha Ape. Yasha Ape for reference, like I just said, or, if you want to check out my previous video, but, it's kind of a risk if you want to do that. It's kind of long. Should hit with like 6,500 pounds of force, have the theoretical lifting strength of a gorilla, seen as the Yasha Ape's a prehistoric gorilla, so 4,000 pounds if you want to know how much it lifts. And he's getting hit repeatedly by Hanayama. Like, gets uppercutted, gets stomped in the face. Hanayama goes up to this DJ guy, lifts like the roof of this, right? And then, slams it onto Baki. Baki, at this point, he's finally unconscious, gets, thrown out the window. Baki, thanks to this, he used his plot armor as, the main MC of the show. And, got back up and started to counter Hanayama. Now, please note, if we consider what I just said earlier about Hanayama, who should be, like, a gross lowball as strong as the Yasha Ape, he's doing pretty good against them. He gets nearly grabbed, nearly crushed, and he's giving him blows that should affect Hanayama. Oh my god, almost butchered his name. And he's out avoiding him. And something that we're going to see in the fight is Hanayama is a bit more raw in his strength, while Baki's more refined. And because Baki's more refined, he uses a lot more techniques, as well as, he uses his speed and, mobility to his advantage, while Hanayama kind of just bull rushes him, as he's more of a brawler. He doesn't really believe in techniques or fighting stances or fighting styles, even though he does have a fighting stance. And immediately, Baki kind of takes advantage of this and, gives it to him. He gives it to him really good. And for a good majority of the fight, actually does hold the advantage, at least in the beginning. And, uses various techniques to really bring him down. He knees him at one point in the face, just completely takes away his teeth. He can't chew no more. Stomps out his face. And then, kicks him away. But at this point, Hanayama does get serious. He gets right back up. Right? And now, he's actually going to try. As we see right here, he's the standing man. We'll, get back to that, when I make a video on Hanayama soon, spoiler alert. But sadly, for Hanayama, well, luckily for Hanayama is what I should say. Sadly for Baki, is Baki gets grabbed and, a bang, a pop sound happens. And it turned out he grabbed his arm, right? And proceeded to pop it. And this was the result. All his skin, the muscles just popped out of his arm because of how much force Hanayama grabbed it with. And Baki's reaction, right, was to get out of there and be more surprised rather than hurt. So at this point, Baki can take a hit, as we can clearly see. He should also have high pain resistance, considering the fact that, he just had his arm popped. And now that he, has his arm popped, his fighting spirit is not deterred in any way. He can move his hand a bit, but, it's just very, very numb. And, he can only move his little finger and his thumb. So, it's not going to be too good for a fight. And he realizes that and starts to go on the defensive, as, he only has one arm now. So this should be a good feat for Baki, considering the fact that he fought a guy who's stronger than the Yasha Ape with one arm. And Hanayama does manage to grab him again. He, does it by punching the floor, lifting it up, causing Baki to stumble and lose his balance. And right when Baki was about to get, grabbed by Hanayama again, Baki learns and adapts in the situation. He, does this unconsciously and instinctively, blocks and then counters, and then proceeds to throw Hanayama and slams him down. And please note, Baki didn't even know what he did. He, starts to understand how Hanayama fights, and he says it like right there, what did I just do? And proceeds to just react. Though, because, Baki was thinking, he, kind of messes up, I guess you could say he has ultra instinct, but, whatever. As it turns out, though, he learns how Hanayama's flow of strength works. So the amount of force that he's putting into this fight, Baki quickly starts to, unconsciously know and understands the flow of how Hanayama's strength works. And for example, here's kind of how Yujiro used it. Yujiro once had a, conversation with this guy. The guy was saying, what would you consider, a genius as a fighter? He says, look, like a fighting genius would be someone who, who could see the flow of strength. That was just like, what do you mean, like the flow of strength? Hanayama, oh my god, Yujiro said, look, grab my finger and I'm going to show you how, the flow of strength works. And then, the guy who was supposed to, I guess, overpower Yujiro's finger ended up being overpowered by Yujiro's finger and even got flipped over by him. Right? And as we see here, but he is saying that he can channel the flow of power and energy in a fight, even though it could all be random. With that, he was able to divert the energy and power I put in. And, Yujiro says, this is someone who you call chosen by God. But, to give a better example, it's kind of like when let's say you're judo, judo. Someone goes in to throw a punch, you counter them by, throwing them over your shoulder. You're essentially redirecting their energy into an attack that you could use against them. On this, it's on a much higher level, as you could see with what Baki was doing with Hanayama. He's completely countering and, throwing him off balance. I'm not saying it's like judo, but he understands the energy input that Hanayama's throwing, and he knows how to, manipulate it and essentially use it against them. And, we see here, he's using the flow of Hanayama's strength against them and to try to take advantage. But, sadly for Baki, Hanayama has, the villain power-up that happens. And, smiles, counters Baki's, next hit. And, he proceeds to take a fighting stance where he's going to focus all his weight, all his strength, and all his focus in his punches. Baki instantly notices this and, unconsciously reacts. He's just like, wow, his aura changed. His fists are really dangerous after all. He gets cornered by Hanayama. And at this point, Hanayama, really does put his entire grip strength, his body weight, and then, to equal speed, to a full force punch to Baki. Now, something that should be noted is if we say, like what Baki said earlier, Hanayama is as strong, if not stronger, than the Great Ape. He was more than likely referencing the Great Ape at its peak, which was like a bloodlusted trying to get him killed. And Hanayama's first hit was just stated right off rip to be stronger than the Yasha Ape, which is, insane. And then you consider they have a bit of a scuffle, they go at it, boom, Baki takes advantage, then, Hanayama starts to get serious. Baki, adapts, understands how, Hanayama's flowing in terms of strength. Hanayama's just like, all right, fine, I'll get really serious. So, to give it a reference, he should be way above what that Yasha Ape should be now. Same thing with Baki, as he just took a hit, right? You know, the slot machine that's behind him just gets completely destroyed. And this is what happened to Baki, right? It doesn't just take one. It takes now at this point, like a body hit. You could probably say somewhere in the sternum or somewhere in the stomach, which is insane considering how hard he's being hit. And you could see the effect that it's having on Baki. Hanayama then grabs him up again, right? Goes in for another punch. And this time, this punch causes like a huge crater. Hanayama at this point is just still hitting him harder. And you could see the crater that's forming behind him. Baki, if you want to say, should at least be like maybe 5 feet tall. Hanayama is considered easily over 6 feet. Bare minimum, you could say at this point 6'3", 6'4", as he does get taller later on. So you could say, for reference, right here, is that the crater is about 6'4", 6'3" in terms of height. You could probably also say width, and with one or two punches, Hanayama caused that, and Baki's the result of what happened when he got hit by it. And despite that, he falls to the floor. Everybody thinks he's dead. He gets up excited, popped arm. He's just like, wow, you bastard. Why didn't you hit me like that before? And this time he goes in again, but Baki now, it's more than likely due to the endorphins now that his body has, proceeds to counter his punch. This should be very impressive for Baki, as he's now fighting someone who hits and is countering someone who hits way harder than a bloodlusted Yasha Ape. Meets him, right? Fist to fist. And Baki smiles. And it turns out he's smiling because his punch was hard enough to break, his finger. Some random, girl thought probably, just faints in the back. And they do this again. Hanayama just puts it back in place. He's just like, all right, fine, let's go again. Right? Boom, breaks another finger. Actually breaks the finger that he broke previously and another finger. And, they go again. And he completely, destroys his fist at this point. Hanayama, goes in for another punch. Baki's just like, yeah, come on, let's get it. Hanayama faints. Tries to go in with a left, but Hanayama didn't know that Baki was the main character of the show. And gets hit with an elbow. The elbow that he popped, and just gets his arm, his fist completely, caved in. Hanayama, he was a bit of a sore loser, as even though Baki won, Baki even says, wow, this is my win. Yeah, nah, he got hit hard and is just thrown, just launched, right? Easily launched. You could easily say, I would say bare minimum 15 feet away. Please know that's a bare minimum, considering how far he launched him. You could probably say 30 feet, but, I can't pixel scale, I'm going to be honest, I probably can't count either, but, don't tell nobody that. And, Hanayama collapses. He thinks he's won. But it turns out Baki unconsciously gets up, right? Walks up to him, wakes up, right? And it turned out he put glass in his mouth to help, cushion his face from the punches. He was willing to let himself get his tongue shredded just to win a fight. And then, considering how hard he got hit, his arm got popped, Baki should have very high endurance and, very high, pain tolerance. And he's only 13. Imagine you put, how boxers put, like, like a teeth guard in their mouth. Imagine instead of that, you put glass in your mouth. And, you just easily spit it out, like no diff. And say, it was to help me, so I didn't get, my face caved in when I got hit by this guy. He even says, I thought it was a good idea, to make sure that my face didn't get too damaged. So, I wanted to cushion the blows that he was going to hit me with. And Hanayama's just like, bro, what's wrong with you? They become friends. Hanayama, gives him gives him the W. He says, look, bro, I'm going to take this L. I'm laying on the floor. I lose. But sadly for them, Yujiro pulls up and proceeds to bully Baki and Hanayama. He's the Chad of Chads at this point in the world. Everybody who's important, not like me, knows who he is. He bullies Hanayama, breaks his legs, proceeds to break his arms. But, I don't want to show Hanayama crying because, I like the guy. And, pimp slaps Baki. This causes him to, want to go train more. Now, I'm going to cut the video here, seeing as, he's mainly just doing training. But in the next video, Baki goes obviously again to the mountains because he's now trying to fight Gaia. Gaia is technically the top mercenary in the United States and is only second in terms of, military capability to Yujiro. Now, this is the end of the video. I hope you guys liked it. Dislike this video if you want to show your appreciation. Unsubscribe. And I hope you guys have a nice one. Because, I'm not. Peace.